Hello, my name is Michelle Benatti, and I'm an Associate Professor of Teacher Education at the State University of New York at Plattsburgh, which is located near the Canadian border of New York State. And I'm presenting to you today from the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee people, specifically the Mohawk Nation. I'm joined today by my colleague, Elga Andriana, who is a lecturer in the Faculty of Psychology at Universitas Gadjah Mada in Yogyakarta, Indonesia. Today, we will share a research project that was conducted in Yogyakarta in 2019. The title of our presentation is Amplifying Children's Voices Within Photovoice, Emerging Inclusive Education Practices. We are grateful to still be able to join you today virtually at the International Association of Special Education Conference. We wish we could be there with you in person in Vietnam. Similar to other countries, people with intellectual disability are nearly invisible in Indonesian society and are considered one of the most stigmatized social groups. As a signatory and having signed and ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2011, the Indonesian government has established policies to improve the social inclusion of persons with disabilities, and through efforts to establish inclusive education practices. Inclusive education for students with intellectual disability is a recent phenomenon in Indonesia. For more than a decade, inclusive education has been embedded within the Indonesian national and provincial government policies and legislation, including the right for inclusive education and the protection of the rights of children with disabilities. The Yogyakarta policy implementation of inclusive education refers to inclusive education as a national education system that provides a proper education for all children who represent all aspects of disability, including children with intellectual disability. Similar to some other countries who have enacted policies to establish inclusive education, progress has been slow to shift from segregated education models, and an even greater challenge involves transforming education to inclusive education practices in regular schools. Yogyakarta, a region of Indonesia, was selected to develop a model of inclusive education that could be successfully scaled up across the country. If the transformation of Indonesian schools towards inclusive education is to be achieved, approaches are needed for educators to shift from deficit models of thinking about students to strengths-based approaches that amplify and honor the voices of students with disabilities and their experiences of social inclusion. Photovoice is one such method that has the potential benefit of providing a means for inclusive teaching practices that can align with the curriculum and provide an avenue for understanding the experiences of students with and without disabilities within inclusive education. Photovoice is a qualitative participatory methodology that we implemented with 31 students with and without disabilities and projects that were connected with their school curricula that focused on the overarching themes of social inclusion, belonging, and community. Students were in high school and 19 of the students were in a primary school. A teacher from each school also participated in the research. We selected these two schools because they have an explicit commitment in their missions of providing inclusive education. The students served as co-researchers, which involved taking photographs and thematically analyzing them during individual interviews and group discussions, culminated with a public photo exhibition and presentations by the students. Data collection occurred over 6 weeks in the two schools, and further cross-case analysis of the data were conducted by myself and Elga. The research question examined was as follows. How do students with and without disabilities perceive social inclusion, belonging, and their community during a Photovoice project in Indonesia? Data analysis involved thematic analysis of student responses during interviews and group discussions. The use of Photovoice was intended to empower the primary school and high school students to share their perspectives about social inclusion, belonging, and community. These were selected with social inclusion being the primary construct, the community providing the context in which social inclusion does or does not occur, and belonging serving as a positive subjective outcome of social inclusion. Wayne and Burris described 9 steps involved in Photovoice that were followed within the current study. The project activities occurred over 6 weeks of collaborating with the students. I'll provide a brief overview of each of those steps of our Photovoice project. Step 1 is to select and recruit a target audience of influential stakeholders. Our stakeholders were selected because they could influence practice and policy related to education. School administrators, governmental education ministers, family members, and teachers were selected to attend a student presentation and photography exhibition event at the end of the project. We also chose to welcome the general public to the event. Step 2 is to recruit a group of Photovoice participants. 2 classes of grade 5 and 6 students and high school students and their teachers were invited to participate in the project. We presented the purpose of the project and expectations for involvement. Step 3 is to introduce the Photovoice project to the participants. We provided each class with a brief presentation to describe the Photovoice project and the research process. Step 4 was to obtain informed consent and assent from the students and their parents. Step 5 is to pose initial themes for photographs. I facilitated a lesson on the meaning of community, and the students created a group concept map, which is a form of graphic organizer that has been found to be helpful to support comprehension and activate prior knowledge about a topic. The image on the slide is an example of a concept map that was created by one of the groups of students. The theme of interdisciplinary curricula for grades 5 and 6 students during the time frame of the project was called Roots, Shoots, and Fruits. A traditional market that was located near the school was selected as the site for the first round of photographs for the primary students. The goods that the student would see for sale connected to the curricular theme. The market was a place where the community gathered to purchase goods, which supported the social studies lessons about community producers and consumers, and science lessons about types of plants. The high school students' curricula had a focus on skills for inquiry. The students were introduced to the concept of community strengths and challenges, and the neighborhood adjacent to the school and a local university campus were selected as the high school students' first round of photography location. Step 6 was to distribute cameras to the participants and to introduce photography skills. A photography student from the university provided a single workshop on photography using devices and basic photography terms. The primary students used a set of school iPads to take their photographs, and the high school students used their own mobile phones or digital cameras to take theirs. The students were asked to take photographs that show strengths of the community, opportunities for improving the community, places, things, or activities that make you feel happy or sad, show belonging or inclusion, or show how you work with others. Step 7 is to provide time for the participants to take photographs. The students were provided an opportunity to take photographs during 2 different sessions. Step 8 is to meet with the students to discuss the photographs and to identify themes using the SHOED method. The students met individually with one of the researchers to discuss their photographs after each round of photography. The students were given a choice to conduct their interviews in English or in Bahasa Indonesia by a research member who was a native speaker of the selected language. On the next slide, you'll see an example of the questions asked during the SHOED process. Step 9 is to plan with the participants a format to share photographs and stories with the influential stakeholders. This final step of Photovoice is focused on collective engagement of participants in knowledge translation with influential stakeholders. 8 students, 3 primary and 5 high school students, volunteered to present their photographs and issues. The students presenting at the photography exhibition included one high school student with an intellectual disability and one high school student with a hearing impairment. All 31 participating students had posters displayed at the event with a link to videos of themselves describing the main issue or theme represented in their photographs. During the interviews, we used the show-ed method to engage the students in analysis of their photographs during individual interviews and group discussions. The students were asked to respond to the following questions for each of their photographs. What do you see here? What is really happening here? How does this relate to our lives? Why does this situation, concern, or strength exist? And what can we do about it? Students were also asked during the interviews, tell me why you decided to take this photograph. What does the photograph show about inclusion, belonging, in our community? If you were going to name this photograph or give it a title, what would you call it? Is there anything else you would like to tell me about your photograph? After all of the photographs were discussed, the following were asked. Tell me about working with other students on this project. What helps students work together? What makes it difficult for students to work together? And is there anything else you would like to tell me about the project? Additional data analysis were conducted by the research team members. Transcripts of the interviews were thematically coded across all of the student participants. Although other themes emerged from the students' photographs and their analyses, 3 themes comprised the focus of the findings and discussion based on the most relevant to the research question and the students' perspectives related to social inclusion, belonging, and community. These themes include 1 theme for the primary school students of inclusive characters and 2 themes for the high school students, cultural and civic engagement in the community and self-determination. Next, Elga will provide an overview of these findings for the 3 main themes.
Within the findings from the primary school, especially the theme of inclusive characters, the primary school students attributed their representation of social inclusion, community, and belonging with specific persons or characters that were representative of being included, or actions that characterize including others in their school community. Here we have an example of a student with learning disabilities described a photo of a teacher working with the students on a bench outside the classroom. The students switched back and forth between referencing another child in the photo and his own experience being supported by the same teacher. He said, yesterday in math, it's a bit difficult. And he was sad because his day is difficult. And then Missy gave me help with this one and gave me the easy one to work on. Yeah, she gave help in learning. Meanwhile, peers without disabilities also talked more generally about helpful teacher with photographs of teachers sitting with students helping them with their lessons. There view teachers as caring. School is like a family, promoting cooperation, friendships, and being respectful and inclusive of others who are different from you. Meanwhile, high school students with and without disabilities identified a variety of issues of concern within the community. The high school students focused their representation of social inclusion, belonging, and their connection to the community through participation in cultural events and engaging in civic activities that promote the culture of their region in Indonesia. None of the high school students focus on disability specifically as an issue related to social inclusion, belonging, and community. The students were given the independent choice of where to take their photos, and they were eager to focus their photos beyond the school walls. The high school students were able to identify aspects of their communities that they viewed as strengths and that align with their personal strength and interests, such as the student with learning disabilities who described his photo. He said, "It is a car wash in my housing complex to get some funds for celebrating Indonesian independence." The picture shows a community of young people who have car wash business to get some funds. I like seeing young people working together to earn funds to celebrate Indonesian independence. Together, we work for a purpose. They can inspire us, and we can follow their actions. Additionally, the high school students were developing self-determination to create social change by developing skills to conduct research, focus on concerns of personal interest, and how to address those issues. An example can be seen here, where students who chose to focus on the issue of vandalism. He said, "I took a few pictures of vandalism around the city. The issue is Jogja is the worst place that has the most people who tag on walls. Why did I take the picture? I took the dirtiest, meaning it was the most tagged. What I learned from this research is that I can help more about vandalism. Vandalism is people painting on walls, and some of them don't have any meaning. It is just like random people who tag on the wall and do it for fun. What's the solution? The solution is we could make a special place for people to paint and draw their emotions, like legally. They wouldn't have to pay a tax at that place. It is just for them to have fun there. They could tag and do their stuff. And the people who clean this in my neighborhood, there's a group of about 20 people. They always clean the village every Sunday, and they clean the vandalism too. The last solution is that we can give a high fine to those who tag and get caught." So what do we learn from this project? The first one is pedagogical tool within inclusive education practices. Photovoice methodology can provide a pedagogical tool within inclusive education practices that can address curriculum and support students with diverse needs. There are some considerations to support student success in Photovoice projects, such as giving a clear expectation during photography sessions, providing multiple means to represent central concept that can support student comprehension of key terms, such as in this project are inclusion, belonging, community, as well as some photography terms. Also provide additional supports as needed for students who may have behavioral challenges or may need additional concrete representation to understand abstract themes. The second one is opportunity to express experiences. Photovoice also provide opportunities to amplify the voices of students with disabilities to express their experiences and perspective of social inclusion in their schools and communities. And the last one is agency to transform the communities. Students with and without disabilities also develop a sense of agency to transform the communities in which they belong. And developing self-determination should be a priority for teachers because higher levels of self-determination of high school students with learning disabilities have been found to be predictive of improved community access and likelihood of employment.
I'd like to acknowledge the American Institute for Indonesian Studies, who provided generous funding for this project, and our collaborative partner in Indonesia, Sukina. Please find my contact information below. Feel free to contact me with questions about this research project or for a copy of the resulting published article from this project.